And we're ready whenever you are, Mayor.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for attending tonight's city council meeting. For those who are attending remotely, the camera in council chambers is set up to show those attending in person tonight. The platform we are using has a raise hand feature. You will notice a picture of a hand in the upper right-hand corner. When we reach the point in the meeting where the public has the opportunity to address council, you can click that button to be given your opportunity to address council. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag,
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Tulley,
Here.
Counselor Selly,
Here.
Counselor Powers,
here.
Counselor Scamperly.
Here.
Counselor Stevenson.
Here.
Counselor Trim.
Here.
Counselor Weaver. Quorum present.
At this time, I will read into the record a letter dated March 7, 2025, received from Mike Weaver. Dear Mayor Tulley and Council, I find it necessary to resign from the Ogdensburg City Council effective March 10th. Due to family obligations, I had to relocate outside of the city limits. I have enjoyed working with everyone and treasure my time on the city council. Serving the citizens of Ogdensburg has been an honor. I wish everyone the best, and I will continue to be an advocate for the city. And if I can be of any assistance, or if there's any city board or commission that I can serve on without being a resident, I would like to be considered. Respectfully, Michael Weaver. So before going through the process for appointment by City Council to fill this vacancy, on behalf of City Council, I thank Mike for his service to the community as a member of City Council. He was and remains very interested in the welfare of our citizens. He was dedicated to the work required of a city councilor at council meetings, as well as at public events where our attendance is welcomed and appreciated. We extend our good wishes to Mike and his family for the future. Section C10 of the city charter speaks to vacancies on city council. I share highlights of the requirements to appoint a successor. So following tonight's meeting, the city clerk shall notify the vacancy committee that a vacancy exists on city council. The vacancy committee must hold a meeting within 5 days of receipt of this notice. The vacancy committee shall solicit and receive nominations of persons eligible to be appointed to the existing vacancy. The committee will determine the process by which it will receive names of individuals interested in appointment to the vacancy. Upon completing its work, the vacancy committee shall recommend and present to City Council the names of 3 persons eligible and willing to serve as city councilor. Said names shall be presented at least 7 days before the city council meeting at which the city council intends on taking action to fill the vacancy. At the meeting where city council shall act on the recommendations of the vacancy committee, a vote is taken until a nominee is selected, following the process stated in section C10, subsection C2D of the city charter. This process shall be read at the time of the vote. Once a nominee is selected, they shall be immediately sworn in as a member of city council. And since the vacancy occurred before July 25th of the current year, the term of the appointed councilor shall be for the balance of the calendar year. City Council will hold a special meeting on April 7th, that's a Monday, to select a citizen to fill the vacancy from the list of names recommended by the vacancy committee. This means the vacancy committee must submit the list of 3 nominees to City Council no later than March 31st. Any other comments? Councilors want to express any comments about Mike's resignation?
No, I just want to say it was a pleasure working with Mike. I know he's very interested in, especially he was really getting into the sportsman activities. You don't have to be a city councilor to stay active. I know the Walleye group is having a meeting with the DEC tonight. I hope Mike stays active. He really wants to be a part of the community here. It's been a pleasure, Mike. Thank you.
If I can just mirror that, Mayor, with Mike. You know, we all realize at the times being a representative for people, committees, concerns, or any advocacy groups can be sometimes a thankless job. And I appreciate Mike stepping up and at a time when he chose to run, and I wish him well.
I had an opportunity to work with Mike through most of his campaigns and as part of the Rotary Club, and he has always been dedicated, and I too would like to thank him. And I'm sorry we're losing him, but I know he will stay active and stay a good advocate of the city.
I agree with everything that's been said. I'm gonna miss having a buddy that was also new to all of the rules and stuff for city council.
That just echoes sentiments of the other counselors. Don't think there's anything else to say.
All right, thanks all. We have 4 presentations tonight, and we'll begin with Chief of Emergency Services Ken Gardner regarding the 2024 Oxford Volunteer Rescue Squad annual report.
Good evening, councilors. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Kathy, thank you for everything you do for us. And Fonda, thank you. First, before I start anywhere report, I want to thank Fonda, number one, for, as you all know, we had our contract negotiations this year, and it was actually a pleasure to have literally got done in 2 meetings of 10 minutes each. So I appreciate all of your support on that agreement, but working with Fonda was absolute pleasure. Thank you, Fonda. You have no idea.
I appreciate the ease with which it happened as well.
Okay, so for the first time in probably 4 years, I come here with really a positive outlook on things that are going on with the rescue squad. We were very lucky. Our membership has started to grow again. We are gaining volunteers almost monthly right now. We've gained, since I sent this out to you, we've had 5 additional new volunteers at that time. Our money situation seems to be kind of getting copacetic again. You know, obviously we all know the COVID-19 money and also the grant money we got from the city to purchase the monitors and all that was tremendous help. But right now we seem to be able to start, you know, leveling out, being copacetic and being able to handle things ourselves. Obviously the donations from the community are greatly appreciated, and they go directly to purchasing additional medical supplies that we can use on all our squads. I would like at this time, I'd like to recognize and thank, obviously, Chief Ken Stahl, Chief Mark Kearns, and the DPW work a couple weeks ago. 2.5 hours with an excavator to tear ice out from the front of our base was going above and beyond. It was much appreciated. You guys did great. But working with all of them, I say it every single time I come up here. This city is an absolute shining example of how the system is supposed to work. Our first responders are tremendous. The police department, if we get an overdose call, are tremendous in getting there quickly with the Narcan and stuff. People in this community have no idea how good this system really is until you go to another city and see what a mess it really is over there. We are doing things right, and it's actually a lot of fun to be a part of seeing the system that works so right. 2024 saw a call volume jump another 100. Biggest thing again for us, we're still overdoses. Unfortunately, we had that 4-month span there where we ran into a whole bunch of, you know, some of the same people twice in a day because, you know, it's just the habit that's created. But even with our call volume going up and the amount of transports that we're now taking out of our local hospital, our scratch rate was 2%. So we're only mutually rated at 2% of 2,994 calls or something like that during the year. So very proud of our members, very proud of my staff, and that includes running, first, second, third, and sometimes even fourth calls lately, along with doing standbys and everything else. So we had a really, really good year. Transport division has taken off. That part, we have like gone through the roof on the amount of transports, and that's mainly because of the regression, I would say, with North Star Health Alliance and, the hospital and some of the services that have been reduced are making it very difficult for them to maintain taking care of patients up there. We've had a couple that have been difficult moments. We're really excited with the Blue Cross Blue Shield going to be sending checks directly to us. That's kind of, they found a loophole. It's an insurance company, of course, they found a loophole. So what they've done at this point, they've decided they're not going to send 100% of what's billed. They're going to send 80% of what they feel the amount of the call should be paid. That is their position at this time. The fight continues with insurance companies, as it seems to always do. Transports, there was a time there where they were considering transports as an in-hospital service, and they were not paying for that. So we were running all those miles and taking those people, paying staff and doing everything else, and we were not being reimbursed by Blue Cross Blue Shield. They seem to be softening the position a little bit on that one. But it would be interesting if, something were to happen at North Star, how North Star is going to claim that it's an out-of-hospital procedure if North Star is actually taking their own patients. So I don't know how they're even going to get paid should that happen. On that, we continue our fight. We continue our disagreement that there is a certificate of need. We did the public hearing. See the hearing report. Then we had the REPSCO meeting, and the REPSCO, which very rarely agrees 100% on anything, including sometimes reading in the minutes. They voted unanimously to reject their COA, that they do not approve the need for stuff. So the next step will be for them to file an appeal to the state, where that'll last a year and a half up there before we get any kind of resolution on that. And then, depending upon what it is, they can appeal one more time, or we can appeal it. So that's going to continue down the road. I think you all had a chance to go through it. You guys all know that, I'm not the one for sitting up here talking for hours about things. I do want to point out one thing which has become a personal issue for me in seeing what's going on with our local hospitals. I started this almost 10 years ago because at that time, Camp Potsdam was not designated as any type of trauma center, and certainly Claxon Heifer was not designated as a trauma center. To try and get our most serious patients, so that'd be trauma patients, that would be confirmed people that are having a cardiac problem, need to get to a cardiac cath station, or somebody that's got a confirmed stroke. We have a level 1 trauma center, we have a full stroke center, and we have a full cardiac cath center sitting 46 miles away from us. I have had the border completely cleared on both sides. There's absolutely no issue with us crossing over and going. For those of you who don't know, I'm talking about taking them up to the Ottawa hospitals. We initially try and talk to anybody at the Ottawa hospital about insurance and money and that kind of stuff. They would not respond to anything. I recently had a meeting, New York State EMS has finally decided to get on board and is willing to help us. So I now have a contact with the Canadian National Insurance, and we're very close to setting up a meeting to get together and try and figure out and make sure that, you know, they'll accept the insurances from New York. They are concerned with the Medicaid and the Medicare rates that they get paid, and obviously a self-pay patient and what would happen. However, I am going to make that my own personal thing, and if I can finish my term in 4 or 5 years and I can get that accomplished and leave knowing that I was able to establish quality health care for people in the North Country, which they do not have right now. You are 2.5 hours away from any of those true facilities. And the helicopters do not want to fly during winter time because they don't want to fly to over to Burlington. They just want to go back down to Syracuse. And whenever late snows are there, which is almost every day, they can't fly through. So people in North Country just are not receiving the quality medical care that they deserve to receive. And I'm making that my personal fight, and I hope to be able to get that finished before my time, before it's time for me to step away and maybe go play with more golf. If you're interested, Mike, I'll be there with you. Other than that, anybody's interested in joining, we would love to have you. The one problem with the people that we are receiving and getting in to the squad is New York State is now named the EMS, the EMT course, the basic course, as a college level class. So if a volunteer comes in and wants to take this class, which we pay for everything, there's no cost to them whatsoever. However, they have to go 2 nights a week and a whole bunch of Saturdays now. And that's hard to ask a volunteer to do. And they are making it, the class, longer and longer in the hours, and more restrictions on them. So it's harder and harder. We're getting people in that are willing to help out, willing to drive and do that for us. But to get them certified and turn them into medical, New York State is making that more difficult on us. But we will continue to fight on that. And I guess the last piece of positive news is we have been able to establish with the high school this coming year to open up and run EMT class as an elective within the high school. It will be taught by our instructors. It will be led by a past teacher from the school. Thank you very much, Mr. Silly. He will oversee the program. We'll be sending different instructors in. It'll be a full year program. These kids will come out. They will receive certification of EMT, and they will, at that point, they will have aids to give them, which they could get paid for. If, should they want to go into this field, which has been good for me for coming up on 40 years this year. So I'm 40 years in there. I'm just that. So anybody have any questions for me?
Questions from council?
I do have one question. What's the rationale about the 80% that they're going to cover? Would that be 80% and then the consumer would pay the balance, or?
Nope, there still be no cost to the consumer except for their normal copay, whatever that may be. No, they're coming up with ways trying to skirt the direct bill, direct pay bill that got passed last year, where what they were doing was paying to any Blue Cross Blue Shield person. They're paying 100% of it and sending it to their house. And people didn't know if they were supposed to turn it over to us, or they knew they were supposed to, and just didn't. So that law finally went into effect that they now have to send the checks directly to us. And now they're just playing games behind.
So are they paying the 80% to the squad, and then the 20%, they're just only paying 80 now instead of the 100%.
And the 80% is only what they feel it should be paid. So if they feel that their 80% of the call of the bill is only equal to Medicare or Medicaid, which they could do, and pay at that lower limit, they can play games, and they're playing the games right now.
This is typical health insurance company stuff. You know, it's called reasonable and customary charges. They decide what the reasonable and customary charge should be for a service. And then that's the number, and then they give you 80%. I deal with them too in my profession. They give you 80% of that, usually an 80-20 split, and that 20% usually goes to the client.
Yeah, no, in our case, it cannot go to the client, it has to come, all payments have to come directly to the rescue squad staff. It's not just us, it's everybody across New York State. But like I say, they're playing loophole games and trying to find ways of not paying the whole bill and, you know, doing whatever they can to keep investing the money they pay them. Just, it's frustrating. It's talked about all the time in New York State meetings. And legislators know they've been, you know, meeting with all of them about this and about North Star. I think they've all seen up this way too much lately, but, well.
Any other questions, comments from council?
I just want to say, thank you for that declaration you made to try to get quality healthcare for North Country citizens. I talked to somebody who was elderly and was going to move south, and she said it's just not the place to grow old and live there.
It's hard right now with Claxon. They're not even Claxon Medical Center now. Now they are, you know, Claxon Medical Campus is what they're actually called, where they're doing business as Claxon Medical Campus under the Carthage Area Hospital. I don't know.
Glad to see you have an increase in volunteers and oil struggles.
Yeah, that's been awesome, and that just came out of no place. I mean, it did help last year, obviously, that we had the expo back, and we always have a lot of fun with our groups and stuff, and people come around. We've been really lucky. We're getting at least one a month, so, and they're staying. They're not leaving. They're staying. I have to admit that most of them are up anywhere from Prescott up to Ottawa right now. We seem to be getting a lot of Canadian ones because they're not allowed to volunteer in EMS on the Canadian side. Some are all coming off side to volunteer. We'll take them.
Ken, any impact on federal reimbursements since President Trump came on board January 20?
No, absolutely not. There's always a talk of trying to increase it. That did get increased last year. And there's supposedly another increase that's going to go into effect this year. I think about 6% on both. And again, it's they're trying to raise the rates. They do know the rates for ambulance squads is well below. If we're going to call, it's not even close to paying, you know, the cost of what it costs us. So slowly but surely, they're trying to increase that. There's been nothing that has been, you know, from President Trump or anybody else looking to cut that with doing this. So.
Thank you. And just on behalf of council and all our citizens, just want to express our appreciation for the strong teaming, continuing teaming of the volunteer rescue squad with our fire department, our police department. You know, I agree when you read this report, and as you've mentioned in the past, I mean, the system in place in Ogdensburg is a shining example that we should all be very proud of, and you and your people should be very proud of. Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Ken.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Have a good evening, sir.
Our next presentation is from Recreation Director Harrison Wirt regarding a Recreation Department community survey.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. So the Recreation Department is currently running a survey that is actually open now and it will be open until Monday, March 24th at 3 p.m. The goal of the survey is to give the community a chance to voice their opinions because I believe it's really important that the community is interested in what we're doing and what we're doing is meeting their needs and wants. The survey is posted on the city website. It's also on the Recreation Department's Facebook page and Instagram page. We've also put up flyers, as you can see on the screen there, that have a QR code on them. And if you scan them with your phone, it takes you instantly to the survey. And I did that. We did that to make it as accessible as possible for everyone because really we just want everyone's opinions because that's what's most important to us.
Any questions, comments from council?
I think it's a great idea to do the survey. So many times people feel they're not heard, and this way they feel like they have an input. And so I'm excited to see the results of that, Harrison.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely we want to hear everyone's voices and opinions on this.
Is this survey in collaboration with Dr. Karen from St. Mark's?
No,
No, this is different.
this is the separate survey, yeah.
Okay. I took this one today. So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. You probably have one response. At least.
Well, we've actually had a good amount of responses so far,
Oh, good.
which has been good to see.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed that. But just trying to get as many people to respond as possible.
I think the feel in the community is they want more recreation. Things to do in the community, a little more vibrancy.
Yeah,
So, welcome aboard. That's your task.
thank you. That's my goal.
All right, good.
I'm gonna work hard to make it happen.
I know you will.
Thank you, Harrison. I think this is an important outreach, and our citizens encourage people to complete the survey, and we have 2 weeks to do it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, next we have a presentation from City Historian Julie Madlin regarding the Heritage House program.
Hello, I'm here representing the Ogdensburg Historic Preservation Commission, and we would like to revive the Heritage House Registry. This program actually began in 1992 and ran through, I think, 1998. There are commission members here who will probably correct me, but I think that's right. And what this program did was it encouraged homeowners to research their homes, and they completed an application. That application then went to the city historian. It then went to the historic commission, and then it was approved by city council. And the homeowners would receive a certificate and they would be recognized by city council. Currently, we have 60 buildings that are on the registry, which actually surprised me. And as you guys know, Ogdensburg is home to many architectural styles, and we have a very rich history. And this is really a great way to celebrate our history and recognize those buildings. And there's a lot of benefits to having a program such as this. It encourages pride in the community and it preserves our heritage. Also, it adds value to the city and business for local shops, which helps our economy grow. So this is a real driver in our economy if we can really get the word out about these historic buildings. So I did a little research before I came here tonight, and I found that heritage tourism really can help the economy. So U.S. travelers had an economic impact of $123 billion last year. 30% of adults stated that heritage tourism impacted their choice of destination. And 49% will pay more for lodging with a heritage component. So it really, I think, would be good for us as a city to continue this program. It would create jobs. It revitalizes neighborhoods. It increases income. It increases property values. It funds new businesses. and it creates or increases the customer base for those businesses. So really, it's kind of a win-win situation for the city. Why not celebrate what we already have?
Thank you, Julie. Questions or comments from council?
I think it's a great program. I was on the historical commission when it first started, and I was sad when I learned that it had fallen by the wayside, so I'm glad that it's being resurrected.
Full
Yeah.
support.
Yeah, I would agree. You know, very exciting that it's being resurrected, and hopefully citizens, who have homes, they're at least 100 years old, for consideration, will take the time to complete the form, the register form, and submit it, and then we'll increase the numbers that are on our registry.
Great. And we have a fantastic commission. We have a lot of new members, and they're very excited and willing to help people complete the applications. So if anyone's having trouble completing those applications, we can help with that. So don't be afraid.
Do people just email you with this, they're interested in emailing with this email address?
Yes, and the applications are actually available here at City Hall. They can also get them at the Ogdensburg History Museum. We also have them there. So paper copies are available for people.
Access online at the city's website.
Yes, we can put them online. Yes, Kathy's saying yes.
In her spare time?
Yeah, in her spare time.
I'm sorry if I missed this, but is there any like other marketing of this going on, like maybe in the paper or the?
We will be sending out a press release. Fund has already approved that, so we will be sending out a press release to let people know that the program is available. And then our goal as a commission is to really promote the homes that are already on there, and the new homes that will be coming on as well. So when people come to town, they'll be able to actually walk the city. It's a very walkable city. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you
Julie.
very much.
Next, we have a presentation from City Controller Angela Gray regarding the 2024 fiscal wrap up.
Mayor, before Angela begins, I just want to make a few notes here. The management team has been working very hard to close the books on 2024. Certainly we'll be doing a lot of deep dive analysis, variance analysis in preparation for the fiscal year 2026 budget process. But we wanted to present to the public and council a 50,000 foot view of the finances.
Thank you.
Good evening. So thank you, Fonda. And I actually will ask Fonda to lead off. We're going to do a joint presentation. And so he is going to start.
I'm going to take the easy slides. So if we go to the first slide, Kathy, with the dollar bill on it. Yep, very good. I wanted to set the stage and let the public and council know that of every tax dollar that a resident pays, roughly a third goes to fund city operations. So for those who say that city finances and their taxes are too high, city council really only has a say in about a third of that. And that's really important that 2/3 of the tax burden fall on other entities such as the school district, the county, and the library. As you can see there, the 2024 combined tax rate was $46.63. And that broke down to $15.99 for the city, $21.45 for the school, $8.39 for the county, and the library at 93 cents. And if we move to the next slide, this was a very interesting analysis that I noticed, and it says a lot, but it also raises a lot more questions. So if you look at the diagrams there, one of the statements that's always been told to me is that that the majority of value of properties, assessed properties, are exempt, wholly exempt from taxes. And in 2019, that was true. You can see that spread, 57% exempt versus 43% taxable. Based on the 2024 numbers, that has flipped a little bit. Wholly exempt property values are 49% of the total versus 51% taxable. That on its own is the statistic. We shouldn't be reading too much into that. The only thing we know is the value of taxable properties has increased. The value of exempt properties have decreased, which is a bit counterintuitive when you know that there's 6 more wholly exempt parcels in the mix. So we don't have a lot of answers as to why, but this is a very important thing for us to get into the nitty gritty and find out why this is so. I suspect it has something to do with the 2023 revalue that happened, that was contracted out. But we have to do a lot more digging into it. But I thought this was a very interesting statistic for us to look into and for us to understand as we go into the 2026 budget process. And I will hand it off to Angela to do all the important stuff.
So good evening. Just as a quick snapshot across the three major funds in the city of Ogdensburg, our general fund saw a deficit operation of $248,000 compared to a surplus the year prior of $330,000. Our water fund operated as a surplus of $179,000 compared to a surplus of $271,000 year prior. The sewer fund had a deficit of $276,000 compared to a deficit of $570,000 year prior. Specifically on the next slide, speaking about the general fund, just to give you a very high level overview of why we're at that $248,000 deficit. Some of the major players in that number on the next slide will show you that we had some positives that happened. Our revenues, as far as sales tax go, they did exceed the budgeted number by $260,000, which was about 10% over budget. We were fortunate to receive $198,000 extra of AIM money, the aid to municipalities from New York State. There is the question as to whether we will receive this reoccurring in 2025. That is in our budget for 2025, so should that not be received, that is a substantial number. We did have the fortune of an increase in our investments in interest. Those were significantly over budget by $142,000. We had an initial budget on that line of $180,000. I did put in the presentation the last 3 years of our return on that investment account. So you can see in the last 3 years that's grown from a little over 1% to a little over 5%, just slightly over 5%. So that's been an opportunity for growth for the city. We also had a significant change in our cash flow and how the money comes into the city with the change of property tax collection. So that allows us to hold collecting the money in January, February, the cash in the account longer for a longer period of time than getting that in the months of April and August. We did also receive $273,000 more of CHIPS money, again, New York State money, into the general fund for 2024. And we do always have some revenue that does not meet budget, whether it be department revenue. So it's not all rosy, but overall, those were some of the key takeaways on the revenue. You can see in the chart, no different than prior years, real property and sales tax are our two largest revenue lines, with the state aid coming in third. Turning to the next slide, if we take a look at our expenditures, we did have expenditures coming in excess of budget of $500,000. And so when we look at very high level departmentally, where we had underspent money, the departments are listed out there. They're mostly in the line of general services, and we do have Parks and Recs and DPW. Unfavorable budget positions is where we overspent money, and that is property tax write-off, and I can talk a little bit about that, fire, planning, and a transfer to capital. So the property tax write-offs, what we did in that area is we always have some amount of taxes that are to be received into the city. And so we did a real realistic approach about what we're going to receive versus what's recorded as a receivable. And we ended up doing a write-off of about $295,000 tax. So pretty substantial, but pretty realistic as well. The fire department, you'll recall at the beginning of the year, Chief Stoll and I presented to council. We did a significant budget change. Very beginning of the year, Did not anticipate some of the personnel injuries that happened within the fire department, so the planned savings for that did not come to fruition. Planning, we had an unbudgeted time accrual payout that was substantial, so that put that department over budget. Capital matches, we're going to talk about in detail a little bit later in the presentation, but that was certainly something that we recognize as an area that we need to focus a little bit differently on. 63% of our general fund expenditures are related to personnel. So that number is very important headed into the 2026 budgeting season, because if we're going to, as a city in our budget, just try to cut contractual expenses, papers, pens, we're not going to get to a balanced budget by that approach. I mean, we have a very heavy lane of personal services, the cost of that inside the general fund.
All right, I think I'm going to take the next slide, Kathy, thanks. So we want to look at the results of any funds operations in the context of what does that mean for a fund balance. Whenever you run a deficit, you lower your fund balance. Whenever you run a surplus, you generally increase your fund balance. So if we look at the chart on the left, on the 1st of January of 2024, we started with almost $4.8 million in fund balance. The deficit was just about $250,000. You subtract the two numbers and what you're left with for a full all-in fund balance of just over $4.5 million. Now, of that $4.5 million, not all of it is available, spendable, and discretionary for council. It breaks down into a number of different components, some of which can be spent and some of it which can't be. So we want to understand what that $4.5 million is made out of. And the first category you can see there, non-spendable, is $176,000 and change. That is roughly like insurance prepaids and those types of things, right, Angela?
Yes.
Yeah. Another almost $50,000 is restricted and not available to be spent. Council also assigned $450,000 to the 2025 budget to balance the budget. So that money is not available to be spent. There's also $112,000, almost $113,000 in encumbered funds from 2024 that are expenses from 2024 that just hadn't been paid. Think about an electric bill for December that doesn't come until January. Remember, this is a snapshot in time, so we're looking at what the fund balance looked like 12/31/2024. We also have $60,000 in reserves, both for the repair and equipment. And what you end up with is available, unassigned, what I call discretionary fund balance that council has some say in how it can or cannot be spent, of about a little over $3.7 million, which is significantly different than the full fund balance number of $4.5 million. So the question remains, is that $3.7 million of unassigned fund balance, is that enough? Is it too much? Is it not enough? And as you can see there, my little graphic there says, well, it depends. It depends on a lot of things. What I would tell you is that until we really have a good handle on what our capital assets are, and we have a management plan in process right now, and until we have a full picture of what our deferred maintenance is, what we probably need to worry about for local matches for already approved projects and grants that the county or the city has already decided to move forward on. We don't know what our fund balance number probably should be. There's a couple of benchmarks that I want to explain, and we're taking some time on this slide because it's really important for us to set context as far as how much we should have in fund balance versus how much we may have available to be able to spend on one-time spending. GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, sets a minimum fund balance policy of 2 months. So that's about 16% of your expenses. I would argue, and I hope that our controller would agree, that 2 months is probably not enough. That would be a minimum, probably in a more of an emergency situation. I like to see closer to 3 months, which is 25% of expenses. So if you look at the bottom left-hand chart there, if we were to take 25% of expenses, our target fund balance would need to be $3.65 million. As of 12/31/2024, we had just over $3.7 million. So pretty close to the 25% track. I think what we're going to find out when we see what our asset management plan is and all of the deferred maintenance that we've been putting off. And I joke to the department heads, they're probably sick of hearing me say it is, well, we've got the bill due today for all the stuff we haven't done in the last, say, 10 years or so. And I know we've done a lot, but there's a lot we haven't done. We've got the bill due now for the stuff that's here now and present. And what we should be doing is we should be planning for all of the future expenses that we're going to have. So we almost have 3 bills due right now. And because of that fact, I think 25% fund balance is unreasonable at this point in time. So if we did kick it back to say 20%, I just did a little math here for you. Our target unassigned fund balance would be closer to $2.9 million. We still have the 3.7 in there, and the variance to the good is about $823,000. But I want to caution everybody, let's not get excited about what looks like a pretty big number there. I can tell you right now that we have at least $3 million in local share matches that we have to come up with projects that council has said, yeah, we have to move forward on. More than 800,000 of which falls in the Green Resiliency Grant and then the New York Swims Grant, right? So that's over whatever that variance amount is by at least $100,000. So although I think fund balance is in a fairly decent place, right? It's not in a bad place. I'm not going to jump up and down and say, oh my God, we've got a lot of extra cash that we can throw at these different projects. That is not the case, but our fund balance is healthy enough so that we can start having some of these conversations.
I would like, before we move on, just to add to Mr. Cronus's commentary, is that when we do a 3-year outlook into the city's finances, we will inevitably budget appropriated fund balance in 2026. We will most likely budget fund balance usage in 2027. So at an early estimate, it's going to take about half of that fund balance in those 2 years, which is conservative, just to meet the basic underlying needs of city government. And to further put that $800,000 in perspective, in the last 2 years, 24 and 25, we have used $747,000, so $747,000 of fund balance in just 2 years. So we have a lot pressing on the general fund balance by regular everyday expenditures and also the capital needs within the city.
So I guess I'll ask a clarifying question because in the long-range plan that was shared with council last fall, an attempt to reduce property taxes by about $120,000 a year in each of the next 4 years, while at the same time reducing the amount of fund balance assigned in each of those years. Am I hearing a little bit different message now on the assigned fund balance side that we might be, I thought we were like 150,000 next year, 2 years out, or maybe I'm missing a year.
I think the actual number, Marituli, is yet to be determined. One of the projections that I was looking at, and again, it's always a changing number, was 300,000 in the 26 budget and 100,000 in the 27 budget. So that's $400,000, half of what we are at 20%.
Right. Yeah. So we're still at least possibly still on course with it.
It's critically important that our budget is structurally balanced. And if we're utilizing this unassigned fund balance, appropriated fund balance, I guess in this case, that is the first clue that our revenues are not enough to cover our expenses. And in that situation, that is an unstructurally balanced budget. And I would say that our job one is to get that under control.
And the 2024 loss is lower than the assigned fund balance in the 24 budget, is it not?
That is accurate. We did expect to spend more in the 2024 budget. We had appropriated $491,000 as a modified budget number. So we are below that, which is positive. We do try to curb spending and keep things
No,
under
no,
where we
understood. I
project,
think it's
but
important that the community knows that while we had a loss in '24 in the general fund, it was much lower than we had anticipated in the developing budget.
that is correct, yes.
And we owe a lot of credit to our department heads for really squeezing the nickels and dimes out of it and getting everything they can out of the spending.
All right, thank you.
Yes. So on our next slide, we take that same kind of slice dollar approach and look at where the money goes within inside general fund. These are very small words here. So our first slide is 14 cents of every dollar going into the general fund goes to general support. To define general support for you, the departments that make up that category, 14%, is council, the city manager, the city comptroller, the city assessment office, the city clerk, the city lawyer, some public works administration only, central services, which buys all the supplies citywide, and the cost of insurance. Public works receives 18 cents of every dollar that goes into the general fund. That's our street maintenance, our street cleaning, garage expenses, snow, sidewalks, etc. The all other expenses, which is 12% or 12 cents of every dollar, is the repayment of debt, our planning department, and also culture and recreation. Left over in that is public safety, which is fire, police, and code, which receives in this particular year 56 cents of every dollar that goes into the general fund. So looking at the next slide, we kind of do a 3-year look at where this money goes over 3 years, 23, 24, and 25 budget. And you can see the numbers are relatively stable across all 3 years, whereas the cost of public safety to the city is in excess of 50% in all 3 years. We do have a limitation of revenue in the general fund. The costs are rising, and there's a financial strain because one's lowered, one's higher, and not in the right direction. This puts increasing pressure on the essential expenditures, meeting everybody's needs in the city very, very challenging. The cost of public safety is undoubtedly, looking at the dollars, only substantial. This does crowd out the money available for other departments. 90% of the cost of public safety is salary and benefits in 2024. When we look at the 2025 budget, to put this in perspective, the public safety budget is 8.7 million of a little over $14 million budget. Of that 8.7 million, 93% of those dollars go to salary and fringe benefits, which is 8 million. So we have an $8.7 million budget, 8 million goes to personnel costs. So the future of the growth and opportunity is reliant on the city managing the cost of public safety in relationship to all other departments. If we go to the next slide, what we'll see are the general fund expense trends by 4 major categories. The orange category represents public safety. The bottom 3 lines that stay relatively flat represent all other: general government support, public works, and other services that we defined earlier. We can see that the cost of public safety continues to rise, and we've had to hold the line on every other department because there has to be some offset somewhere. We seem to have hit somewhat of a ceiling without economic development or a substantial boost in sales tax, our second largest revenue, of the ability to raise revenue. So without that, the public safety costs are, like I said, they are shadowing the other cost. If it's the decision that we make in a budget process to continue on these trends, it's necessary to pare down the expectations of other government services outside of public safety. That just becomes our reality based upon the allocation of dollars.
Yeah, and just to echo that, that's probably one of the most important phrases that we're going to be thinking about as the fiscal year 2026 budget process takes hold. Safe streets are important. There's no question about that. But it's the capacity issues on the other government services that may take a hit as we move forward with these trends. And it's important for council and the public to know that we can't be all things to all people. Decisions have to be made. There's limited pot of dollars, and if it is spent once, it doesn't get to be spent again on another category.
So looking at our next slide, we look here at the revenue charted in blue versus the expenditures charted in orange. What we would like to see in every single year is the blue line ends higher than the orange line, essentially. We did have that situation in 2021 and 2023 when we had surpluses in the general fund. You can see in 2024, the deficit is represented there. And going ahead in projection to 2025, we are anticipating a $500,000 shortfall via budget when comparing revenues and expenditures. So we definitely have a trend that is unfavorable and not sustainable long-term that we do want to work on turning around.
And we will probably, as we work through operations, try and close that gap as much as we can, which is what happened in 2024 to a certain extent. We are budgeted to spend more this year than we will receive in revenues.
The next slide deals with a more in the weeds look at sales tax revenue. So we can see what sales tax has done over the course of 2019 to the projection in 2025. So there's 2 years, there's 2 things going on here. For half of this chart, we were under a shared agreement with St. Lawrence County. For the other half of this, we were preempted in the city, collecting our own sales tax with a modest share agreement on the extra home rule with St. Lawrence County. So you can see that in last year, we did exceed budget to what we did budget. We are planning this year to come in on budget. But with that being said, I just want to draw your attention, if you have not read it, to the New York State Comptroller's Office's latest report on sales tax, in which, and this is a lot of quotes from the New York State Comptroller, is that overall statewide sales tax collections slowed. We did not see that in St. Lawrence County, nor did we see that in the city of Ogdensburg. So the state comptroller goes on to say that they think that these anomalies, when compared to the rest of the state, are due to technical corrections within sales tax. Technical corrections, those are when the state comes in and you have a late payer, they might realign some from one municipality to another. So really the result of growth related to technical adjustments should not be mistaken for increased spending within our area. And this is a quote that sales tax growth slowed in 2024, and many counties and cities even experienced declines. This slowing growth, combined with economic risks and potential changes at the federal level, called for careful budgeting on part of local officials to effectively navigate these uncertain times. There is a prediction out there that St. Lawrence County's sales tax would have seen no growth in 2024 if it was not for $4.8 million of technical adjustments. So we are hopeful.
What are those technical adjustments?
Sorry, Councilor Powers?
What are those technical adjustments?
That is when you may have someone in arrears, you may have a reallocation between municipalities. Perhaps something was overlooked being reported to the city of Ogdensburg, and we got credit for that outside of the normal collection cycle.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So we are hopeful, and as always, we continue to watch sales tax with hawk eyes to make sure that we are meeting target. The next slide is just a chart showing the real property taxes. You can see that first several years, you know, they're up, down. We have a significant growth, a significant decline. And then the tail end of that, the last 2 points are where we are right now, looking to keep the tax rate in the city as low as possible and lower taxes.
Yep, and the only thing I'd add to that is whether the tax rate increases or decreases, that doesn't necessarily mean a resident's tax bill is going to go up or down. There's no one-to-one correlation between a tax rate increasing or decreasing what your bill says. It's a confluence of the tax rate, the levy that the municipality assesses, and your home's value. So it's really important to say, I think it's great that the trend overall in the last few years on the property tax rate is a decline. That's very good. But as you can know, in 2024, the levy went up $1 million and many home assessments went up as well. So a lot of people said, geez, the tax rate went down, but my bill actually went up. That's because just because the tax rate goes down doesn't mean that an individual is going to see a decrease in their tax bill.
Thank you. Turning page and changing gears, we're going to just do a quick overlook of the water fund, which did operate at a surplus of $179,000. The water fund revenue is in line with budget. The expenses came in under budget. We were able to add $75,000 to a reserve, and this is a new practice in the city in the last couple of years, something that we haven't done. So I'm thankful for council to set up these reserves, because I really do anticipate they'll make some of the future needs that might be emergent easier on the budget in those years. Overall, we have a discretionary fund balance of $3.3 million, which does exceed 1 year of appropriation. So if we stop right there, overall, the water fund is in good shape with an asterisk, because we have an impending capital project that exceeds $25 million. So on the next slide, we can see the reason why the city, and I skipped that one, Kathy, so we'll go to even the next one, sorry. And Fonda might want to go over this with council, the reason why we need to build the water fund balance.
Certainly happy to do so. So we had a preliminary engineering study on the drinking water plant. It was updated at the end of last year, early part of this year. And it looks like to make the improvements that we should be making in investing in our capital equipment and facilities, we probably are going to be needing around the $27 million mark to bring that up to current standards. Not to say that the water plant isn't operating at peak efficiency, it is, but it is dated and old and needs improvements. Important to say that if we were to move forward on some type of plan that mirrors the preliminary engineering report, the improvements would be made on our timetable as we see fit, as opposed to getting a consent order from DEC sometime in the future where they dictate what they want when they want, and that is not necessarily the position you want to be at. So being proactive in the short term now could really be a benefit. The double-edged sword on that, however, is when you don't have a consent order, you don't score as well on the grants. I'm hoping, very hopeful, and very confident that our new grant writing company will help us navigate that a little bit better than we've been able to in the past. But there are significant improvements that we need to make on our drinking water facilities and capital. And I would imagine that it's better to do it on our terms as opposed to being ordered to do so.
Just one question on the list of items in the proposed project, I guess. The line for residential metering. So would that be the anticipation of the project that all residences would be metered upon completion of the project?
Correct. I think our approach is, and we've got some meetings coming up on this, but our approach is probably going to take the preliminary report and divide it up into different sub-projects. I think metering will be one of those sub-projects. Municipalities that don't have metering don't score as well on grants. So that may be one of the more priority sub-projects that we want to take a look at. But certainly that is a component that's been identified in the preliminary engineering study as something that council should look at and consider. My guess is that's a project that stands on its own. We'll do our own debate, get public input on that. And if we were to move forward, you can see the cost on that. It's going to be slightly over $6 million. And again, these are numbers now. There's always inflation. We're not sure exactly what some of the tariff things are what that's going to affect on what we can get our hands on and what the cost of things are going to be up. So there's a lot of moving parts on this, but as of, say, the end of the year this year, this was probably our best guess on estimating on costs. But again, I caution everyone, these are not set in stone numbers. These are estimates, and they hopefully would go down, but I would imagine that more likely they would go up.
Yeah, I was more focused on the topic versus the estimated cost, since water user fees have been the discussion topic with the public and this council for the past year plus.
Yeah, yeah.
I think metering is the way to get away from that concern. It certainly makes us more equitable across the board. Whether this is a project that the public wants to move forward on and council wants to move forward on is yet to be determined.
Thank you.
Okay, changing your gears yet again to the sewer fund. Operationally, on the next slide, just a very high level overview that we had already mentioned, a $276,000 deficit. We did have a planned deficit at budget time in this fund of $523,000. So similar to the general fund, it's not as bad as we thought it would be. So if we turn the page on this one to the next slide, we have some highlights of the sewer fund. Just that the revenue overall, good news, is in line with budget. We did have, some lines meet budget, some exceed, some don't. And one of the areas that we had a $37,000 increase in revenue was leachate that we had coming into this fund. We do have an IMA with Hubleton that was slightly below budget. And the metered sewer revenue was below budget as well. So our flat was right where we had anticipated. And again, we have increases and decreases in other lines that keep the overall revenue in line with budget. Our expenses were $280,000 under budget. Therefore, at the end of this, we have a discretionary fund balance of $2.3 million. That $2.3 million represents approximately 6 months of appropriations. The sewer fund overall budget is about $4.1 million in that area. So again, decent with an asterisk, because we also have a $1 million debt payment every single year for the next 28 years, I believe we have left on this particular fund. This fund balance will not sustain that long-term debt payment at the current sewer rates. So there has to be some upward adjustment of those rates in order to, or increase revenue, either way, in other areas, in order to meet our future debt obligation. The sewer fund just cannot repay that debt at this current operating level. So you can look just as a footnote here, in 2002, the sewer budget was 2.6 million. And right now the sewer budget is over $4 million. So that's not a long time to increase $1.4 million in budget. That's quite a short time frame for that substantial increase. And we do also have an ongoing need for capital projects in this fund as well. So despite having just finished a very large one, there's more on the horizon for the sewer fund as well. Switching gears to the capital fund overview. This particular year, part of our budget adjustment that is in the agenda is we went through all the capital projects that were open. And we were able to close the oldest of capital projects. So we had a diamond infrastructure project, also known as the St. Lawrence Shores Resiliency. The Dasney River Park, which I believe is just River Park, but it was funded by Dasney, that project. Shade Roller, we have costs to date on Shade Roller. I wouldn't say that that's a closed project, but we did square up the general fund's obligation there. We had a grant from FEMA for flooding that happened in pre-2020 that we closed out, and the Brownfield Opportunity, I believe, marketing project, we had a match on that. So all of this $450,000 comes from, we had a grant here where the city had to match 10%, 5% here, 20% there. All of that equated to $450. In order to close these projects, we had to put the city's share in those. not ideal way to close projects, not the best practice. So in talking with the city manager, we're both in agreement that, when the newer projects come online, we will identify, here's the match. Right now, we have a COPS grant with a 52% match. So, they're out there, they're real, it's real money, but we've got to talk about when we accept these projects, what these matches are and the impact of them to the respective fund, because they do impact the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund.
Yeah, I can't stress enough how important it really is to think about and plan for what local matches look like. And we're even going to take it a step further. When we do move forward on a new project, we're going to create a budget that Angela's going to have and put into the system, and we're going to charge against that budget, so we always know where we are on things. Now, if we come in under budget, that's obviously a bonus, but we've struggled in closing these grants, and part of it is because we just haven't used the best practices that we need to get back on. And I think if we get there, that'll really help us on the back end in closing grants, but more importantly, making sure that we get every dollar that we have coming to us. And in this regard, and what we've had to do in the past, say, 3 months in trying to get these closed out, I would question whether we're able to do that. Moving forward, I won't have those questions.
And really a big kudos to specifically work of Jennifer Ashley, Andrew Smith. We have these grants, we're able to take some of these grants and lessen the early on initial anticipated match by really doing some good grant management. So, there was one particular one where, we had a grant, they were able to reallocate some money, and it really is helping the city out. So, they deserve kudos to that. It is certainly not an easy lift to do the grant management to the way we are set up here.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Heck yeah.
Turning again, next slide is just a very high level of the projects. If anyone is curious as to exactly what projects are closed versus what projects are open. We have 4 categories here: closed projects, open projects, substantially complete, meaning, we just got a little bit to bring that to the last mile, and future commitments and future projects. So substantially complete would be the Ready Morissette Park and Marina, 30 Main Street, and the Main Street Pump Station. So those are getting ready to close in the probably 2025 fiscal year, I would say. Future commitments, we have a FEMA December 2022 blizzard damage, which is over $500,000 that we'll be investing to cover the damages caused by that blizzard. We have the pool, for which we've received a SWIMS grant, and we have the mall parking lot, which we've received a Green Resiliency Infrastructure grant. Those 2 grants right there have $1 million approximate match. We also have pump stations to redo, the East David Street project, and very long-standing open project of the Maple City Rail Trail. So looking ahead to the last slide, these are the capital project needs. A lot of these are not new to council. These came before council in the same format last year. We were able to clear up one in the police department. But by and large, I believe everything is a repeat of last year with some additions. So there's a lot to think about here, a lot to prioritize. And as part of the budget process in this current year, we will also be doing an asset management plan, and will lead into a capital project plan as well. Any questions?
Questions or comments from council?
I would just be interested in slide number 7, the general fund, the planning department overspent in that. Could you elaborate on that a little?
Sure. Anytime personnel leaves from the city, they have an accrued bank of time. And when someone does depart under certain conditions, they are paid out for their accrued leave. In this particular instance, that was not a small number.
So it was specific to the planning department?
Yes, it
that
was.
payout.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
That Maple City Rail Trail connector,
Yes.
assuming that's the Black Bridge.
That is my understanding, yes.
And, that was about $2.8 million, I think, grant, off the top of my head. Where do we stand on that? That's been a long time, 6, 7 years probably.
Yeah, that grant was put on hold for probably various reasons before I got here. I have reached out to the consultant on that, and we've had some initial conversations. Because it's been on hold for so long, probably the first steps are going to be to get in and reevaluate the bridge. It's been several years since anyone's looked at it, and they just would like to make sure that the conditions are similar, and if they have changed, incorporating that into some type of new engineering. That will be a cost, and most likely a cost to the city one way or the other, whether it takes money away from being able to do more on that project, and we'd have to kind of scale back on it, or if we would put local dollars into that to be able to keep the grant dollars completely dedicated to the project itself. So a lot to do on that. I think that's a really good project for us to work forward. And so when I reached out, I said, well, this could be a quick and easy win, but as always, there are lots of challenges and hurdles on this one. So it's going to be a while before we can resurrect this one.
Just an observation on the slide on page 7 with the bullet about 63% of the general fund expenditures are personnel related costs. And I know some of the presentation focused on personnel, but my prior experiences, I don't find that an alarming percentage, quite honestly. The total, when we are a municipal government providing services, you're a service enterprise. So I don't find that percentage alarming. Do you?
No, not alarming, but the point of the matter is that says that 63% of your budget is contractual obligations, and hard to be able to change. That leaves you 37% of other areas to cut. I think the point of the matter is that for us to balance, it's going to be very difficult doing it, cutting papers, pens, and some of those other things. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that was the point, not necessarily that number is outrageous. It just basically takes that out of the, it's non-discretionary at that point.
Yes, kind of.
Go ahead, Mike.
Kind of the price of doing business to an extent with the contractual aspects. I appreciate the quite in-depth review here, and I recall from the last time we did something similar to this, another very good presentation. It's pretty evident, obviously, that we've got to keep our belt nice and tight here, and that going forward. One of the things that concerns me the most, and again, it's the price of doing business with staff personnel and whatnot, is the potential lack of resources for some of our public safety aspect, meaning that as training and equipment prices go up, we've got a short window, or we've got a short balance left in some of those operating costs. And I'm obviously, everybody there knows I'm full support of public safety, but going forward, I'm not one that relies on a can of hope, but ultimately at the end of the day, hopefully we start seeing some progress down in some of our areas to assist in sales tax and some offsettings. But obviously it was a very good presentation, and it's a good reminder for us to keep our belt nice and tight here. And I tip my hat to all the department heads and to Fonda for not only the continued information, but fiduciary responsibility you're all showing.
I would just like to echo some of Councilor Powers' comments that really appreciate the detail in this report and the amount of work that Fonda, Angela, and your staff did in putting all this together. This is vital information for the council and for the community, and I'm in the weeds on this type of stuff, so I like the detail. So thank you very much.
I have one more comment, if I
Sure.
may. I would be really interested in slide number 3 with the taxable versus wholly exempt property. So I think that we look at, anytime we look at statistics, we can move them, right? So I'd be interested in knowing the number of parcels that are tax exempt versus taxable to see what that percentage is versus what the assessed value of those parcels are, because this is a big swing here. And it's a perception in our community about how many, and we've always believed it, to be true, how many properties are tax exempt versus are taxable. So I know you said you were going to do some more work and some more research in that area, I believe. So I'd be very interested in seeing what that differences would be and what the differences are. And I know there are some properties we may be losing that are taxable versus tax exempt coming up soon too.
Yeah, I'll give you a short answer though. We got about 200 wholly exempt properties.
Okay.
So you do the math, it's 3,000 to 200 something. Maybe I got that wrong, 4,000 to 200, something in that range.
5 to 7%, I'll say.
How many?
5 to 7%. We have about 4,000 parcels in the city.
But that would include like, okay, so that would include like the little lot of 20 by 30 that nothing's on it kind of thing. So that's why we're looking at the value of those. If we're looking at separate parcels, right? It would be any parcel. So
Any
it would
parcel,
be-
correct. That, I mean, that would, without digging into the details, I mean, I would say off the cuff, yes. But I do think that there would be more information to come to council on this topic, just so everybody has a better awareness and understanding of taxable versus non-taxable property.
That would be interesting because this is it doesn't look like a big swing, but it is a big swing.
I think there's some structural questions we have to ask about the numbers as well. And I'm glad to have a new assessor here, and she just got a little bit busier. You got it.
Quite a that bit of that exempt property is state hospital property. too, correct?
Absolutely,
State
yep.
property. So sometimes to ask for the number of properties isn't really the big answer. The big answer is larger parcels or percentage of property itself, which I think this graph does.
What I was looking for, Councilor Dan, is the fact that for many years, we were told 30% of the properties paid for the rest in the city. So then when you look at that, and that's what I was trying to justify, was that just a statistical look in a different avenue of
Sure.
equating that. Not that one is more important than the other, just trying to get that mindset.
I think what we really need to dig into is the results of the 2023 reassessment and where we could be better there.
Yeah, it's, as Fonda mentioned that earlier in the presentation with the reevaluation. And well, listen, when we're getting tax exempt properties and those numbers are decreasing, that's a good thing as long as we can try and get that other property back on, get that same property back on the rolls.
All right, you good? Again, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, my pleasure.
We have one proclamation tonight for Women's History Month, and I'll make that proclamation now. Whereas the month of March is nationally recognized as Women's History Month, a time to celebrate the contributions and achievements of women throughout history. And whereas the city of Ogdensburg has a rich history of strong and influential women who have made significant contributions to our community and beyond. And whereas we honor and recognize the accomplishments of 3 remarkable women, in particular, artist Sally James Farnham, suffragist Marion Sanger Frank, and physician Dr. Mary Bryan. And whereas Sally James Farnham, a native of Ogdensburg, was a renowned sculptor whose work can be found in prominent locations such as Central Park, the Pan American Union in Washington, D.C., and the Library Park National Historic District in Ogdensburg. Whereas Marion Sanger Frank, along with her husband, Mayor Julius Frank, were instrumental in the women's suffrage movement in Ogdensburg and played a crucial role in securing the right to vote for women in New York State. And whereas Dr. Mary Bryan, a pioneering physician and advocate for women's health, dedicated her life to providing medical care to women in India, then was the physician in charge of infants at the United Helpers Home, and was medical director of the Society of United Helpers. And whereas these women have left a lasting impact on our city and serve as role models for future generations of women, and whereas their contributions and achievements have paved the way for progress and equality for women in Ogdensburg and beyond, and whereas it is important to recognize and celebrate the accomplishments of women throughout history and to continue to strive for gender equality and empowerment. Now, therefore, I, Michael Tooley, Mayor of the City of Ogdensburg, do hereby proclaim the month of March as Women's History Month in our city. I urge all citizens to join me in honoring the legacy of Sally James Farnham, Marion Sanger Frank, and Dr. Mary Bryan, and to celebrate the achievements of women in our community and beyond. In witness whereof I have herein to set my hand and cause this seal to be affixed. Yes, it's absolutely. We do not have any public hearings tonight, so that brings us to personal appearance. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I want to thank Fonda and the team for the ongoing updating for the citizens. It's in straightforward language, it's in real time, and it's really appreciated. We've talked a lot about expenses and what the budget looks like and what it's going to look like in the next couple of years. And I know that from a personal budgeting point of view, if I'm not making my certain categories, I have to look at, well, do I put less in savings? What do I do? Use choices. But sometimes the choice is also, gosh, do I need to get a part-time job? Because I've got to increase the revenue. So what I'd like to see maybe in the next couple of months is, what is the city doing from an economic development point of view? Because I know we are working on that. So rather than just looking at sales tax revenue and property tax, what are we doing to start seeding the way for future economic development that will bring in more revenue? Just because I think once we put out those ideas or those plans, it will encourage others to contribute ideas and thoughts and maybe help the marketing of the city or whatever it is we need to do. But I'd like to see that aspect maybe in the next couple of months brought to council to share with the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raise hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you will have 5 minutes.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
And that brings us to correspondence. Do we have any correspondence tonight, Kim?
We do not.
Next, we have our consent agenda, that the claims as enumerated in general fund warrant number 5-2025 in the amount of $450,474.68, and library warrant number 5-2025 in the amount of $0, and capital fund warrant number 5-25 in the amount of $0, and community development fund warrant number 5-2025 in the amount of $0, and community renewal fund warrant number 5-2025 in the amount of $0 as audited, be and the same hereby are ordered paid. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim.
Yes.
Approved.
That brings us to appointments, and we have a reappointment tonight that's not on the agenda, so I'm going to raise it from the floor. It will require at least 5 yes votes. But I would like to make a motion to reappoint Douglas Loeffler to the City of Ogdensburg's Vacancy Committee for a term beginning March 10, 2025 and ending December 31st, 2029.
Second that.
Any discussion?
Doug is an asset. We should be lucky to have him on that committee.
Yep, it's a reappointment. He served in that committee in prior years, yes. Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim.
Yes.
Mayor Tulley.
Yes.
Approved.
Our first item of business will be read by Public Works Director Shane Brown.
A resolution authorizing new fees for the municipal arena.
Someone care to introduce this?
I'll move that.
Second.
Just give us an outline, Shane, please.
Yep. So in 2024, the city charged for transitional docking, we charge $1.75 and $2 respectively. We're gonna, 25, it'll be $3 per foot. Regular inside city rates for power, dock spaces were $42.50 last year. It'll go to $45. Inside rate for a dock without power was $36.25. It'll go to $38.75. With power, there is a minimum charge of $9.45 and $813.75 without power. For non-residents, dock with power goes from $39.50 to $42. Oops, I said that backwards. I'm sorry. The first one was non-residents. The next one is residents. Residence rates went from $39.50 to $42, and without power is $32.75 to $35.25, and with a minimum of $882 with power and $740.25 without power.
If I could just add to that, it's a $2.50 increase per foot. The average increase is going to be about $60 per boat. It's not going to generate a lot of additional revenues, about $2,600 or so, but we are looking to offset some of the salary increases in 2025, as well as thinking about the local match for that project that Angela talked about, the FEMA docks project, that $500,000 project that we have a local share of about $62,000. So it's modest increases, but we do think that that trend needs to move a little higher than it's been.
Do we have any idea how these rates compare with private marinas? I don't want to undercut them too drastically, but we should be competitive.
I believe we're higher with at least one of the local marinas. The other one I was not able to get information on.
Yeah, that was my question.
And we are also going to have more expenses with weed control. We're going to have more expenses with that, so that would also cover this, because I know that's been a big concern of the voters in the past.
Yeah, there is, weed removal is in the budget again this year.
Any other questions, comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business, we read by City Manager Fonda Cronus.
All right, a resolution to submit a RVRDA Community Development and Environmental Improvement Program application.
Move that.
Second.
Absolutely. So there is a project to improve the ventilation in the centrifuge room at the wastewater treatment plant. This is work that we're going to have to do, but our friends at the Development Authority have identified a potential grant to offset the majority of the costs, but we need council's thumbs up to be able to apply for that grant.
Questions or comments?
Absolutely. Better than being on the fund, so if we can get it.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business, we read by City Manager Fonda Cronus.
A resolution authorizing city manager to execute a grant agreement with New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation.
I make that motion.
I second.
This is a required resolution regarding the Green Resiliency Grant for the downtown parking lot. They require us to name an authorized representative and to identify the amount of the local share and where that local share is coming from, which is good because that's what we want to do moving forward. And so our proposal here in this document is to identify the local share of $325,000 coming from the fund balance in the general fund.
Any of this local share be done through in-kind services?
Potentially. We're not there yet from the engineering standpoint, but if we can, we're certainly going to do so. I can tell you that that probably grant administration is an eligible expense, so that will certainly go to our, we'll limit the cash that needs to come out of the fund balance for that. It won't be a lot of dollars, but it's something.
Has this been completely engineered?
No, not at all.
Good. You know, one of the biggest concerns that I have, if you remember the flooding that occurs sometimes Franklin Street. We had a large storm. We had a special meeting last summer on it. And our water sewer separation is an issue in the city. I think it's a great time to take all the water that's coming off those roofs and parking lots and not being reused. I know part of that is reusing the water. But the point is I'd love just the excess water instead of going into that main line that goes down River Street and overtaxes that pipe that I think is part of the problem. I'd like to see a sewer line for storm sewer going into the river in this project. I think it's vitally important. While we're doing this, every time we do some infrastructure that's similar to this, we can get a sewer line that runs to the river incorporated. I think it's important. So,
Certainly, there's been a preliminary engineering report done, but not full engineering. And so I think we have a meeting on this week, if not early next week. So we'll make sure that this is a point that's brought up. And even if we can't do it within the grant parameters, maybe we can set it up so that, another project can come in and complete it.
I have to agree with Dan on that, having witnessed the water at State and Riverside coming out of the manhole 4 to 5 feet high after a heavy rainstorm. That State Street line at least can't handle any more fluid being pumped into it when it rains. We have to come up with an alternative solution there.
some of that was on my top priorities trying to ask for. Trying to get some of this stormwater separated.
Yeah, it's a big challenge for the city and probably a lot of concentration on that over the next 5 years. It starts with I&I studies, and we'll be applying for one of those very soon. You'll probably have a grant request for that next meeting, as a matter of fact.
Well, this is a good step in that right direction with the green practices and everything to get that water, that parking lot at least taken care of. That's a big parking lot.
It is. This is a good project for us.
Any other questions or comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Selly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Manager Fonda Cronus.
A resolution authorizing city managers to submit a fiscal year 2022 cybersecurity grant program application.
I'll move that.
Second it.
Questions or comments?
No cost to the city, grant?
That is correct.
Sounds good.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Selly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Approved.
Our next item of business will be read by City Controller Angela Grady.
This is a resolution authorizing the city manager to transfer funds to balance the 2024 budget.
Yeah.
Second.
And this is, we do this at the end, after the end of each fiscal year, in an effort to bring the lines that are overexpended into balance with the adjusted budget.
Correct, but this is what we would like to prevent in the current fiscal year. So we would really, we're doing it right now for 2024. That is correct. We've done it this way the last couple of years. But ideally, we would be bringing these budget resolutions to you more frequently. So we do them as we go
Okay.
throughout the year.
Questions or comments? Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tulley?
Yes.
Counselor Selly?
Yes.
Counselor Powers?
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly?
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson?
Yes.
Counselor Trim?
Yes.
That
Approved.
brings us to old business. Does anyone have any old business this evening?
I have one item I'd just like to talk about, which was also on my top topics. I brought this up several times since 2010. I'd like to see a new code system put in. We have one. We have one designed. There's been so much work, years of work put into it. And I think a while back, Andrea sent the new council a version of it. There's a version with that's done in red with the changes. And I'd like council to get that, maybe the new planning people can get that to us. I believe it's all been approved. I think there's already been public comment. We can welcome more. And the last time council looked at that code system, we're looking at changing signage. We had a meeting, Jen, Storm, I think Mike Powers was on it, down at the Tibisky Center. We looked at it. And the point is that code system was more business friendly. It was more residential friendly. And I think I'd like to get that passed as soon as we can. And then if we need to make changes, rather than going through a 2 or 3 year process right now, let's make changes after we get that. So if we can get that, take a look at it, and maybe continue this conversation that I'm starting right now. And I think it was a good code system that several departments worked hard on.
Do you mean zoning?
Zoning, yeah.
Okay. Yep, it's, I was able to locate a binder with the new code in it. So it's on the radar for certain.
And I have a binder myself. See if anybody needs it.
Dan,
If
I
I
also have
recall.
that. I also have that, and I think that part of it also is that we have so many petite lots in the older sections of our town, and it really addresses porches and driveways
Right.
and practical things in those areas, and that would alleviate some of the burden of the zoning board of appeals as well.
And people can build easier. And again, it puts more revenue in the tank. And people, it was good for business. And I think we can make more changes that are more business friendly. To Wendy's point, to try and allow people to build a business easier, or expand their business or whatever they need to do. There's a lot of good changes in that. And I think there's potential for a lot more good changes. So I'd like to see that code system come around. Like I said, I've been barking about it since 2010, and Andrew went to work on it, and let's do it. Let's get at it. Try and change some things. Let's do it. That's all I have for this.
Thank you. Any other old business? Brings us to new business. Is anyone any new business to introduce this evening? All right, I do have a resolution to introduce at this time. Again, coming from the floor, it required 5 affirmative votes to pass. And it's a resolution to fill a vacancy on city council. Whereas a vacancy exists at the city council due to a resignation, now therefore be it resolved that the city council hereby calls for the vacancy committee to convene in accordance with city charter, Article 3, Section C10, to solicit names of persons eligible and willing to fill this vacancy. Be it further resolved that the vacancy committee is hereby directed to submit to the city council by March 31st, 2025, a list of 3 persons eligible and willing to fill this vacancy through December 31, 2025. And be it further resolved that the city council hereby schedules the vote to fill this vacancy to take place during a special meeting to be called for on April 7th, 2025 at 6 p.m. in City Council Chambers at City Hall, 330 4th Street, Ogdensburg, New York, for which the only item of business will be a vote to fill the vacancy. So moved.
Second.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Mayor Tully,
Yes.
approved.
And that brings us to items, I'm sorry, any other new business? All right, items of discussion. We'll begin with City Manager Fonda Cronin.
We briefly had an opportunity to potentially purchase a new fire truck bumper at a significant discount, $200,000 to $300,000. That quickly evaporated through our hands, but I still wanted to have the conversation about it. And we've got Chief Stahl here as well as the controller to maybe talk about that a little bit. There could be another opportunity, not 100% sure, but there could be another opportunity to purchase a piece of equipment that we need to have at a reduced price. And so I think having the discussion with council now and getting maybe some direction or at least some thoughts on going in that direction may be of value in being able to shorten the decision time making up. So Chief, you have a couple of stats you want to share?
Yeah, so a salesman got a hold of me and he had what they call a demo fire engine that was being manufactured currently. And he said the demo was available for purchase for $750,000. The average rate right now of an engine, if you were to order one, is $1.1 million with an 18-month timeline. This particular one would have been available in January. No money would have been due until January. One advantage of taking a disadvantage of the demo is they're kind of a stock item. One advantage when they're manufacturing is there are some changes that we can make to accommodate our wants and needs. So this one came available. I mentioned it to the city manager because I thought if you could save $250,000, even if we were going to wait 2 years to possibly have the money to start purchasing this fire engine, to save the money now. As of Friday, that actual demo got sold. So I have been in talks with 2 other salesmen that most of the companies do the same thing. They have these demo models that get purchased. They're actually manufactured for the company to actually put out to demonstrate. But with the overwhelming need for fire engines, a lot of them are getting sold through this process. So I think you'd be looking at close to $250,000 savings. One thing that is on the horizon is in 2026, the EPA emissions have changed for all, not just fire truck, it's also for over the road full-size trucks. And I'm told that the chassis and engine alone difference is going to be $140,000. That coupled with the fact that, as the city manager mentioned earlier, we don't know what this tariff thing is going to do. So I just thought it was something that we should bring to your attention because we are in need of a fire engine. The one that would be replaced is in its 20th year. It should be considered a reserve engine, and at 25, the recommendation through the NFPA is to actually take it completely out of service. So,
Chief, I don't want to see another disaster where we make the papers because the rear end fell out from underneath the truck. But, off the top of your head, can you give us current age and approximate condition of our current engines?
Okay,
It's
so
relatively new.
I can. So the newest one is the Q1, which is our aerial. That is a 2021 Pierce, has 9,000 miles on it. Obviously, that is the newest. There's not too many concerns with that one. We have a 2013 Toyne engine, 29,000 miles. The one that I'd be looking to replace would be the 2005 Crimson engine with 40,000 miles. We've had quite a long list of some maintenance issues with it. We have recently, just as recent as 2 weeks ago, brought a mechanic in from the Syracuse area who has it's actually in better shape than it's been in the last 5 years. But as you know, you can go to the chiropractor and your back still hurts the next week. So I don't know where we stand with that. I do know that the costs are going to rise to purchase and to maintain. And I just don't want to get in a situation, as you said, where we have a catastrophic failure.
We are looking at full-size engine, 1,500, 2,000 gallon pump with
This is a
about
full
500 gallons of water.
This would the one that we were actually in the process of considering was a 2,000 gallon pump with a 1,000 gallon tank. So full-size engine.
The customization that you indicated, if we ordered one, some of that, if it was really necessary, could be retrofitted in most cases if we had to do it, or is there anything critical that
So-
we'd be giving up?
Customization is years ago, like departments had certain specs. Like for instance, Syracuse Fire has a complete spec line for all their vehicles. So as times change, your needs change. So like we would need a compartment that is designated for EMS gear. So you'd have to have an outlet on there. We have some extrication equipment that also requires some backup power. We would want to be able to configure the compartments in a way that we can utilize them in the seating in a way that meets our staffing. So most of them now are kind of most of them pretty much come stock. That you just when you start adding different bells and whistles is when they become custom. Most departments are going through this way of purchasing fire apparatus.
Thank you.
So just to double up on that, Chief, considering modifications with the demo model, any idea what that additional cost might come to?
Well, this particular one, I don't want to go in a whole bunch of detail because I have been in talks with other.
Yeah, just a roundabout figure. I don't need a full detail.
Yeah.
I know, I recognize you're dealing with demos, so.
The two things that we would have had to have added to this one that had recently sold would have cost an additional $20,000. But at that point, I felt I was in negotiation, so I'm not so sure that was a guaranteed 20 that we had to pay. But we didn't
Right.
get to the point of the sales pitch versus me trying to talk them down. So,
Well, I think you should definitely try and haggle anyway.
Oh, absolutely. I do it in my personal life, so I'd be a fool not to do it for the city.
My son's looking for a car right now, so I've been trying to teach him the ropes, you know.
Well, again, it's a testament to the department heads doing their due diligence and looking to offset costs and to acquire needs. So
Okay, so
My personal thought, chief, is we can replace a 20-year-old truck with savings of $250,000 in today's world. We should try to jump on it. Custom built truck, I think you're being optimistic with an 18-month time frame from what I'm seeing. Other emergency vehicles, we're talking 2.5 years. So
I agree.
prices are going up over $1 million. So
I agree too.
So one of the things we do want to talk about a little bit in conversation is how we pay for it. That'll always be one of my talking points here, because we don't necessarily have the checkbook to be able to write an $800,000 check or $750,000, whatever it happens to be. So we've got a number of options. Well, I guess 3. One is congressionally directed spending. Perhaps a member of Congress or a senator could sponsor us and come up with the dollars. That would make it 100% grant. Probably low on the feasibility scale, but certainly an option that we would pursue, because as remember the chiefs did say, we would commit now but not have to exchange any dollars until 2026, which would give us time to be able to do some of this stuff. Probably what's most likely is to do some type of financing. We have 2 kind of options on this. One would be maybe a USDA combination grant loan, mostly vast majority loan, and perhaps maybe a little bit of grant in there. The advantage to that is it's longer terms. We would be able to go out 20 years with a low interest rate. I think we were quoted 4.125% interest, which is significantly under the market right now. The other thing we could do would be to ban for it on a short-term basis and convert that into a longer-term bond with probably some other capital expenditures over the course of time. So there would probably be most likely some borrowing that would have to happen on this. I would prefer doing USDA because the terms are longer, which means the upfront cost is less and the per year cost is less. Interest rate is pretty good given what's out there in the market. Angela, anything else you might want to add on to that?
No, I think
Typical with USDA financing, there is no early payment penalty per se. So if it's something that we got into, say it's a 20-year loan and it made better sense to refinance that loan as part of a larger municipal borrowing, that option is out there as well. But I share Fonda's sentiment on that.
The next question. Once we go through the USDA, we're going to do some other capital projects like a building or something, throw it all into a bond. So, yeah,
It's a nice savings, so be great.
So I just wanted to share the financing options, talk about this opportunity in case another one comes up. You're in the know on it, and we could probably move fairly quickly in being able to secure it. I would hate to see us lose out on another one for process or procedure.
close it. Get the deal closed. Let's move.
Okay, so I think the consensus of council is if you have these type of opportunities, jump. Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, any other items for discussion?
Just a note to everyone, on Sunday, March 16th, the Ogdensburg History Museum is going to do a presentation with 10 courageous women. And it's a very interesting program. There'll be 10 local women that will portray people from the history that have been women that have been avant-garde. And that will be from 1 to 2:30 p.m. at the Ogdensburg History Museum at 207 Ford Street. And it just is a donation if you're able to give it.
I'd just like to make a note that the Attorney General's approved the rescue squad's sale of a building. And hopefully we're going to see some action by the end of March and get that back on the tax rolls.
It's very welcome news. Thanks for sharing that. Anyone else? I do have a couple. First, the organizational meeting of the City of Ogdensburg's Board of Ethics is scheduled on Tuesday, March 25th at 6 p.m. here at City Hall. And then second, congratulations to the OFA hockey team and Coach John Frederick for winning the New York State Regional Division II Hockey Championship this past Saturday with a 3-2 win over Rye High School in front of a standing room only crowd at the Golden Dome. With their victory, OFA advances to the New York State Final Four this weekend. OFA plays Queensberry High School at 11:30 Saturday morning at Lecom Harbor Course Center in Buffalo. And should OFA win Saturday, they would advance to the Division II championship game Sunday morning at 11. So just wanted to recognize that accomplishment, and hopefully there's more accomplishments to come. That brings us to citizen participation. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 2 minutes. Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raise hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you will have 2 minutes.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
We have a resolution to adjourn to executive session, and I will introduce that. Whereas City Manager Fonda Cronus requests an executive session with members of the Augsburg City Council to discuss proposed pending or current litigation. And whereas New York State Open Meetings Law permits City Council to adjourn to executive session for such purpose, now therefore be it resolved that City Council adjourn to executive session to discuss proposed pending or current litigation, and be it further resolved that any action resulting from this executive session shall be taken in open session. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Mayor Tully,
Yes.
Counselor Silly,
Yes.
approved.
We do not anticipate any action following executive session, so I'll make a motion to adjourn from executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned following executive session.